Hello, good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. Well, I didn't get much done this morning. I had terrible, terrible nightmarish flashbacks that I was really just trapped in them. I was sending a text message to this friend in the Midwest, spiritual friend, and was going to send this saint from yesterday, Saint Dorothy. I think it was Saint Dorothy. Yes, from the 3rd century. Just a little write-up about her. And all of a sudden, something triggered me that I started writing about. I was trapped back in the past with my ex-husband and specific things that he said at specific times. And I kept writing, and it just kept going, these events that were horrific, evil, controlling me in a sick way, and cheating on me, but I would bury it. It was a real nightmare that I was awake writing, but I couldn't get out of it until finally it got to things that I hadn't remembered in a long time in detail. It's like I was there. And I don't know, finally I jarred out of it the writing in this long text and told this person, that I don't know how I got into that, what triggered me, but I realized when I got off writing it and sent the here's the saint for yesterday. Sorry, I forgot to send it. And I thought it's because of all my delight and desire to learn pure love and practice it. And in order to have pure love, God means even love of your enemies. And I think I'd mentioned in the last video last night that I did love my ex-husband. I could love his soul, and it came back to that again today. But I was shaken. And it's a terrible thing when someone is cruel and controls. And he knew, that I valued my marriage vows. It was to God in the church I grew up with, the Methodist church in this hometown. And he would threaten then, knowing that I didn't believe in divorce. But this very first flashback, the first part of the flashback was a time that we were visiting this couple he knew from one of his administration classes he had started taking. And I was starting to get a master's in reading. And we were at their mountain cabin. And this man, the man of this couple who owned the mountain cabin, lovely condo, said something about this woman that he would take out to dinner after class. Just brought it up. I guess thought that I knew. And this is awful. I didn't understand that I have inner sense then. I thought everybody did. But I got also freaked out by this couple, this older man and woman, and wondered all of a sudden, why are we here? Is this a setup for some kind of a sex exchange of partners or something? But I got so upset then when he mentioned, because I had, how inside I had wondered, I would wait and have a dinner late after his class was over and eat early evening class. But sometimes he wouldn't get home till 10. And then he would sort of just pick at the food. I would have a nice dinner, candlelight or whatever, We had only been married a year and a half. And that was the reason he mentioned, what about those dinners out with so-and-so, this woman? And that sounded like fun, or it sort of was like toying the conversation, this older man was. And I got up and went to the room we were staying in. I was so upset. and my husband came and of course denied, and oh, it was nothing, we just were talking, just go out to dinner, get a bite to eat. But it had been habitual. And I knew deep down, but because I confronted, he then would threaten, well, we'll just get a divorce right now. We'll just get a divorce. But he knew, see, that I didn't believe in divorce, and that I believed in the vows and God and prayer and all. And he would fake it that he did, but that would come out. But I remembered that just so vividly. And of course, then, I think, why didn't I just say, yes, let's get out now? You know, but it was the vows and my vow before God at the altar that riveted me, and thought, well, we can get through this. I wasn't naive that people cheat, but that was the first. And I felt unsafe there then with this couple too. I was on, but that destroyed whatever of the element of the weekend, because I was just devastated by the break in trust and knowing that he'd been messing, but I was busy burying it emotionally. So these different, and then from there it just went to other times it got even worse of things. And I'd bury it. I knew actually the first time I saw this woman at his new school that he'd gotten a job. He didn't even tell me he'd applied for it, but he got very controlling and reduced me. Whenever we would get into a position, like when we had our nursery school house, and I had finished my master's in reading, but I didn't need to teach. I managed the nursery school house. I fixed up the actual house part. I increased the school through the state of California, got it licensed for up through second grade. First, I did K preschool through kindergarten. Hired an extra teacher, an extra aide. We increased the enrollment by about a third, and we're bringing in income. I developed the curriculum and worked with the staff director, who was became a good friend. I became friends with the teachers and the staff director, but in a good way. I didn't reduce, the professionalism of it. But it was in Claremont, California, it was getting to have even a better name than ever. The Claremont College professors wanted their children in. We had huge waiting list for children. And I developed a very innovative curriculum for little children, But, I always like to do things well. And God would help me. I prayed. I believed in God. I mean, and we did have that ghost there, that poltergeist, that unwelcome spirit, but I was so happy doing that. But then he wanted to move and do something else, and he came up with something that he knew would hook me, and that was to move to Texas, to the up-and-coming town my sister and her husband had moved to, and had a family, and he knew I was close with that sister. And he says, we'll start a children's bookstore. Oh, he knew what I liked. Children's bookstore and educational supply. And we got everything set up, went there, even got a house purchased, got a storefront, got a great deal on a storefront. And we're meeting with the different wholesalers. But the last one, he insisted he was going to go by himself. And then he came back. It was the night before we had flights to come back. We'd sold the nursery school. Everything was set up. We bought a house there. The children we had two daughters then. They were with one of the nursery school teachers who they loved, and who later on became their aunt through a younger brother that my husband had, like 7 years younger than him or something. So And he just announced, he came in and announced, we're not, I stopped it all. We're not doing it. I stopped it all. He wouldn't say why. And I said, but this is both of us, oh no, it's me. I'm the husband. He just announced it to my sister and her husband. I was in shock. I just started crying and what about the nursery school house? We've lost that now. I love that. But and he had to back out of everything. We lost deposit on the house we had just bought the day before. Practically bought it outright because of the price differential. All the work I'd done on that nursery school that not only built up the clientele and the reputation, but the income of it, but I'd also fixed up the whole old Grove house. Painted, refinished floors, wallpapered. Wallpaper was fancy then. I was in then. And developed a classroom in the house. It was a big, huge house. We had plenty of room for even another classroom in the house, plus a play area in the house. And it was just gone. The whole thing was just, but he controlled. And that, going over that, I was locked in it. But then when I got out of this, there was more then after. I'm not going to get into all of it. I dumped all that out at the very earliest videos that I did. It was just a document dump of the hells. And, but what I realized what was going on was, and I'm not just blaming the devil, because God allows these things, these flashbacks. And I honestly don't know if it's in my control to stop them, because they're so horrible and vivid. And it was the first time though he wouldn't even let me fly back on my ticket. Drive back with him. He wanted to be alone, he said, and he was so forceful. And it made it awkward with my sister and her husband there. And they felt terrible for me and saw into what I was married to. And it shocked them. They didn't know what to say or do. He got an airline ticket for me to fly back because he didn't want me driving back with, I don't know, it was a nightmare. And from then on, it got even worse in the marriage, even worse. But I was making it work for the sake of my vows and the marriage, and realizing, none are perfect or whatever you start telling yourself. And we had 2 darling little girls then, and he was very threatening and scary at that point. But he was a Jekyll Hyde kind of person. So, but that's the first time when he did get back, and I'd flown back first, and he finally came back. So first I called him a cad. I didn't know what the word meant, but I got upset and I said, "You're nothing but a cad." And I don't know, that took guts. That must have been also from the Holy Spirit. I didn't know what the word meant, but it was accurate. I later looked it up. And but the whole thing happened this morning. God wanted me to see just what pure love is all about. What demands are involved if you want pure love. And it's to love the soul that God created, because we can't love evil or cruelty or someone who is controlling us for malicious purposes, for their own toying and entertainment and their own egos. And I've thought about this. Nancy Guthrie, this 84-year-old woman who's abducted, and who knows if she's alive now even. But they want ransom money, but there's no means to get it to them, to the captors. And so it's not looking good that she's maybe not even alive, because they aren't showing proof of life. They just make the demand for the money, but then won't communicate further. So I don't even know if they have a means to get them the money. I guess Bitcoin somehow over internet or something. But mercy, honey, that you're making a good nest, but that's okay. You don't need to scratch the blanket to bits. But so God had me allowed this grip of these details of the reality, and I was right there, and it was daylight and everything, but I was like in another time period, in another world, with this monster who I was afraid of, but also was in denial and would bury it then. To survive, I would bury it and think, well, it's got to get better. And he would be better then or something, or then something new he'd do. But then he'd be right into another affair or and toy with me about it also, trying to get a reaction. And I wasn't one to play games like that. But I took a lot of abuse, which at that point in time, and it's this way anyway, the woman, this is a statistic with divorce of dual income marriages, especially, it depends on the career, but teachers. He was then got a principalship, but the woman's income drops down to 25%. And so it's a 75% drop of income for the woman who most often has the children. And the child support doesn't begin to make up for the differentiation in the income. So even with me working, it was that compared, because the man usually has a higher paying job because the mother has been rearing the children or has a job that reflects and gives her the ability to do everything else. I managed all the finances. He didn't know how to buy a house or handle mortgages or none of that. And I did the fix up of them, not repairs at that time. I didn't have the construction skills, but all else, all the redecorating and refinishing and design and knack for what looks good and all of that, paint colors and wallpaper and where to put what and etc. And I sold the houses too myself. I had probably from my dad an ability in sales, so and we would make money on them. So and God gave me a gift. I could find a good house to buy. And knew, we were in an upswing economy. We'd be in one place, I get it fixed up, and I would double our income that way. Double what we made house by house. It escalated. So we were in a good position, being in education financially. Then we had a good hunk of money in order to invest and have a nicer property that was saleable then if he got another job, which he would get often. I realized, well, he would get too much in trouble with the womenizing, and it was going to start to hurt his reputation as an educator. So then he'd get another job, and he could easily. He was such a con artist, and he was a hard worker, but all he knew was education and talking. He talked in his way into the jobs amazingly well. It surprised me that he got that job at Beverly Hills after being a principal at a little tiny crossroads little elementary school in an unknown area, undeveloped area in sort of high desert area. It's now a booming area, but back then it was just a crossroads. And he landed that Beverly Hills job. It's amazing. But and then later he lied in his interviews. So, and he could really sell himself well. He sold himself to me. But to love, that he's really the hardest person and would be for me to be able to love. And my son with him. My son has become like a clone. By his choice, my son's choice. He got snookered in. Well, but I don't blame him because I believed him too. So, but I'm content with the son having no contact because I never knew he'd become erratic and nasty on the phone and talk about flashbacks. That would be one right there. So, and the nastiness of that itself and his anger toward me over Catholicism. He conveniently forgets he begged and begged to become Catholic. And then when he ran into temporalization of the Catholic Church, because my son was very spiritual and very idealistic like me, he was young, and then hit into some of the realities of the temporal Catholic world, and it crushed him. So he turned, and he blamed me, he blamed God, he blamed the church. And the temporal church, not all of it, not all of temporal is bad. There's many aspects, temporalized aspects, that have been created over the centuries that are needed actually in our society, in our time period. We need a place for people to meet. So they started building churches, and they would put in gorgeous stained glass windows. They wanted to honor God through art and through beauty and tall spires reaching to heaven, and music was created, beautiful music. So it's a lot of it is lovely, and the intention was to honor God and to provide a place for people to come and worship and develop programs, but that can always also take another tact of getting human beings more temporally focused and locused, that their inner becomes more attached to the temporal, and they lose the spiritual of their souls. Our souls are spiritual creations by God, given to us. And so, and when we lose our ability to see spiritually and to act spiritually, to embrace and to love and to be spiritual beings, just like with the sensing, when I turn it off and let the temporal get in the way and distract me, as I did in my marriage many times, God would, I'd be shown things, but I couldn't take it. So I would bury it and would try to believe something else or just work all the harder in temporal aspects to keep things together. For the sake of the children, eventually it came down to that, to keep the family together. So it's interesting how the love, and how if we can love, and it can be difficult to love, but it's loving the soul is the best way forward, is to love the soul of others. That's, to me anyway, that's the way I have been able to love under any circumstances, to love the soul. Well, I want to go through the I think in this video I'm going to bring up Sophia. I really admire her thought, And I'd like to explore this state of purgatory. The Catholic Church calls it purgatory. I call it progression. That when we die, we will be at various stages of spiritual and love. And when we die, this is what I've always felt and sensed and lived and understood, that when we die, we will be at all of us, at various points of love, of capability of love of God, love of one another, love of ourselves. But supremely love of God. And when we die, then we progress. Those of us who need more understanding and learning of love, we continue to grow and learn. A gradual, smooth, peaceful progression after we pass. And we continue in that progression until we reach a point of having pure love, of our souls being pure love, to the point where we are united in oneness with God, who is pure love. And in that point, we are in a total bliss of glory. And it's just always it made sense to me that not everybody is going to be at the same point of love developed in their soul from earth, because the temporal can affect us all in different ways. Like for me, a hurdle would be love of my ex-husband, who caused so much damage to me personally, not just emotionally, but in many ways, and to my family, to my children, and to my parents. It didn't just stop with me and other people that he hurt. Women that he hurt, other women. So is there a progression of spiritual and of love when we die? Well, Sophia brings up the good point. She says it never felt right to her. And I wrote and asked her to comment further. Does she think that there is no progression at all? Or is it that it isn't this painful fire purgatory, negative kind of thing? I don't think that. I think that progression is a positive. I'm relieved that I progressed out of that nightmare I was having this morning. That clutch of horrible reliving. Thankful it's over. And I don't want it again. I'm going to focus on love of that ex-husband's soul, so that love will sustain me, so that I'll have a protection around me, armor of God, that I won't have another horrible attack like that, a flashback. Because it's over, it's long over. And I have had the flashback before, just not quite to that detail, in that order of it, and not that length of a grip on me. So this is something to consider when we die, because Jesus does say to the thief, I think to the right of him, who acknowledged Jesus on the cross, Lord, called him Lord, can I be with you, or something to that effect, or can you forgive me, or he let it be known to Jesus that he knew he was God. And Jesus said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." So we know it's possible. But my thing is God is timeless. He developed time for earth, but is today feasible for this thief to be in paradise? Is that the day? Is there a day in heaven? When I died, there was no sense of time. So it could have been that day that I had died and was with God, or it could have been a lot longer that happened. I wouldn't have known. But God sent me back. So then I did have a time frame of how long I had been dead. So, I think it's an interesting point to consider. Is there a progression that is positive in which we increasingly learn more love, more of purity of love, if we haven't learned it yet on earth? I still think there's a possibility that we can learn pure love right here. But the more I pray about it and consider, I do believe that we let the temporal block us from the acquisition of pure love, of God's pure love. It can be a stumbling block to us. The temporal can. We get caught at the lower levels of love, like human love or friendship love, and we don't get quite to the phase of love of God and Himself when we're on earth, and the ability to love the soul. Like, I don't know if this family that their mother is kidnapped, can they love the person who has kidnapped their mother right now? Do they love that person who took their mother, possibly injured her, or she's had a heart attack or something? Are they aware they can love the soul? I'm sure, probably. It seems like this is Savannah Guthrie is very, very religious type person. But, it's just questions I'm having that will affect my prayer and my practicing and learning pure love. It's a real thing. It's not a wave the wand and I'm going to have pure love, and then when I die I will be immediately in heaven. When I died before, when I died, it wasn't like I was just right away purified. I met with God. His main thing was, I recognized later, God intended for me to go back and rear my children. He wanted it to be my will, my choice, and He set it up for that, but He kept showing me things. Like my children, He then showed me the ex-husband in an image of him alive in a fit of temper. And I knew immediately, that would not be good for my children to have him as their father, young and all. They need protecting. And so, and the divorce was already over by a year and a half or something, and then a year, I think it was over. He had left maybe 3 years before, but in total, from the time of my death experience. But that was the best I could do, was to tell God when He asked me a second time, do you want to go on with me or go back now, after I've shown you your sweet children and showed me Him, and showed me the ex-husband and what kind of a life my children would have with him. So I chose to go. I told God I would do whatever you want me to do. I still couldn't say I would go back because it's so glorious there. I want to emphasize that. And that's why I don't think that we just die and immediately are in heaven. Because I still had a lot to learn of love and of the spiritual life. And I guess it's conceivable, but I wasn't as actualized spiritually as even I was 6 months after that. That death experience, not experience, but yeah, it was a death experience. That dying and being with God and then being sent back and knowing that I allowed it by saying, I will do what you want. And he immediately said, I'm sending you back, rear your children and fulfill your mission. And that I was on my way back through the build from way out, on, going down through the walls, through the ceiling. I could see, everything going on beneath me. I could see Lovita Goodlad with her hand over my face, and they had called the surgeon. He was in another room, upset with the anesthesiologist for his efforts in trying to keep me alive, but totally bungled it and should have called the surgeon right away. But it just lent to the miracle, the whole thing, and it gave me more time dead to experience that. And to know, it's so vivid. And to also, then he gave me these ecstasies that were the closest thing to the death experience of anything you could have on earth, is an experience of God taking you into himself like that and out of the world right there while you're in Mass. So, because the Mass is that powerful, it's heaven on earth. And God wanted me to be able to share that. And I would like to share it more. And what he wants in the Mass of us that isn't happening because it's become so temporalized. So, but the bishop wasn't interested in any of that, nor Reverend Monsignor, nor other priests in other dioceses. No, because they get too cluttered with the temporal. Oh, is this for real? And is this lady, can I trust this lady? And she a nutcase or what? Or how does it work? They want to know the temporal way of how an ecstasy works. And are you making it happen somehow? And how could that be so temporal? Temporal. We have lost our spiritual beings. Not all, but many have. And they're the ones mostly running the church. So we can see how it got temporalized over the centuries through people losing their spiritual being, their spiritual nature. Because the temporal is a powerful influence. It has been on me. The temporal of my husband saying, I'll divorce you if you don't do this or that. When we had children, or even before, knowing he knew how to use the temporal to reduce me more, to have me fear, because the temporal isn't easy for a single woman. And the shame and the vows I had honored, he knew I was very religious, so that was a big hammer to use on me. And so, and also my aunt and my best friend had married my cousin, and she'd moved out to California then, and we were close, and it would get complicated if I blew all that up for her too. There were strings attached, in other words, temporal strings attached. And the devil, who was in my ex-husband, used those strings to manipulate. So, but see, if I had had more faith and trust, but it all worked out in the end anyway. God allowed me to be a stay-at-home mother through being disabled. And he gave me that death experience. And it's part of my mission. This is my mission time now, is sharing things and sharing my spiritual journey of now coming to the reality of the learning and being in God's pure love needs to be actualized in me, activated. It has to activate to the point where I become pure love. And anyone else out there who wants to join me on this journey, this quest, and those of you who maybe already have pure love in this life. I don't know. I'm not sure I'll recognize it if it happens with me that I have pure love, other than there will be signs, more effectiveness with prayer. But we aren't shown always, or most of the time, we aren't shown the results of our prayer. So we have to go in faith, in a kind of a blind faith with even pure love. But this whole topic came up basically because of someone who has passed who asked people to pray for her before she was dead. She knew she was dying soon and said, please pray for my soul when I'm gone, when I'm dead. Pray for my soul. She was concerned about being in purgatory and wanted prayers to get her out of purgatory. And see, I don't consider when we die anything awful. It certainly wasn't for me, and I was no religious sister by any means. I hadn't even really begun to get into more depth of spiritual life or scripture or anything. I wasn't even aware of my spiritual life, of the spiritual element that God kept giving me and had from birth. I didn't know I was a mystic. I was born a mystic. And I didn't know that God had a mission for me after I reared my children, a spiritual mission. So, which is for ourselves, but also for others when we have missions, purposes. We all have them. It's just a matter of finding what it is. So, and it doesn't have to be anything huge. Mine is very small. But it's big to me to become actualized in pure love as God's pure love. And from there, I don't know what. God will lead. I'm to follow. So, and to share the process and the journey. I know I'm to do that as I go along, mistakes and all. So, because God is teaching me, just like this morning, that horrible, nightmarish flashback, it was extended over probably 10 years. Well, yeah, 10 years, 9 years of marriage. It extended. It went into detail of things I'd forgotten about. But it's been a good, worthwhile horror. Taught me a lot. Also about how much the devil doesn't want me on this quest of pure love, for one thing. And though God wants me to recognize how much focus it does take to love a soul, and to make sure that we do love the soul and know that we don't have to condone evil, but that God created souls to be beautiful, pure, truthful, loving. They are repositories of love. And when we adulterate them in the temporal world by our choices, our circumstances, and bring sin in, the love is reduced. And it's what is even worse is the love of the soul that's in the soul by God gets adulterated, bastardized, and corrupted. There's really nothing worse than that, than a soul that has become ugly, tainted by evil, and chose that, and refuses to get help to even get better, because they think that they're perfect, that the devil consumes them so much that they actually believe that they're great. They become a lot of them are very narcissistic souls that have been taken over by the temporal. But others, just how we approach church, our view of church can be very temporal. And it's like a prison in itself, a temporal prison, because we never get to the real spiritual food, the spiritual reality of our souls and what we are to be, spiritual beings. We stay stuck as temporal beings. And that's a real conflict with our soul. That the love in the soul becomes maybe like curdled or something, I don't know, but it's put off. And it's hindered. It's hindered. It's like the people, entangled in the nets. It's hindered from freely swimming out into the vastness of God's pure love. That was that ocean, swimming out into God's pure love. And exploring and having capacity to love purely and extensively, and to be on a journey that is endless and all good, all beautiful, all loving, all truthful. So it's very appealing. And that's why dying and the idea of a progression, if I'm not totally pure in love, but maybe we become that way, but I didn't I didn't notice anything when I was dead, that all of a sudden I became purely loving, because if I had been pure love, I would have immediately sacrificed and said, oh yes, I'll go back. I'll go back to take care of my children. But there was a lot of greed in me. I loved where I was. It was glorious. I couldn't say, oh well, oh yes, I'll go back. I had to struggle and struggle just to come up with, well, I'll do whatever you want. Because I was guilt-ridden seeing my children. Well, at first, I was just, oh, how wonderful, they're having so much fun at mom and dad's. But then I remember, well, and I have these beautiful children. But then to see the ex-husband in a fit of temper, and he was very ugly when in his tempers, very ugly and scary. And oh my, then I could put it together. But even then, he asked me again. I hesitated and struggled, and finally said, well, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Because heaven, or wherever I was so glorious. Wherever it is where we go when we die, it's so glorious. I don't know how it would have been if I were, say, a soul that didn't have much love at all in it to begin with. Would my perception be the same? I don't know. I kind of think not. I don't know if we are in the same sphere as someone who is very evil, that they have curdled or tainted the love that God has in their soul, destroyed that love into malice and betrayal, untruth and ugliness and bad, rather than truth, beauty, and goodness. I don't know if their experience when they die is, but that they're not in a total hell. I think it does take a lot to be in a total hell. From other reports of other people who have died, and from those who have died and were in hell initially, and God gave them a second chance and sent them back. I've listened to some of those death experiences, and one man he did a total switch. It frightened him so much. He doesn't want to ever be there. So he was sent back, and his life became one of evangelization, a total change from how he had been. He became very spiritual, very loving of God, a believer in Christ, and spread the good news and did all he could. There was one that came back, and he said honestly he didn't change back, but he was still sent back. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't by now done something different with his life. So anyway, it's just interesting. It is possible, I guess, by that one thing that Jesus said, you will be with me today in paradise. So we can call maybe when we die paradise. That sort of takes away the label of heaven with the idea that it is the ultimate. Paradise may be the all-encompassing, where I was. But I still have this sense. It's just in me. But maybe it's from the temporal aspects of levels of progression, of nature. Starts with the seed and it grows and it grows, or we're children and we learn and we learn. And what we don't learn, we can still learn. Like the man telling me, well, you're old, yes, but you can learn this technical stuff. I know you can learn it. And I can. It's in the realm of possibility. It's not a natural instinct for me, technical stuff. It's too temporal, it's too concrete. It makes me sort of agitated or nervous or something. It unnerves me. Technology does. I'm better with love, with trying to understand love, and a journey like that is unknown in essence, but I'm more comfortable with that, with the spiritual, than the technical, tangible, temporal, which I think is a blessing that I am. I'm grateful that God made me like this. And I always have, that's part of how I was born. And always with the fascination for the dead, too. Very natural, wasn't fearful. When Gertie, this old neighbor lady that I loved, died, I got this other neighbor girl to go with me to the funeral home during our lunchtime. And the funeral director thought it was odd and questioned me, and I explained, oh, she's my neighbor. I want to see her. I'm fine. He thought it was strange the little girl would, I think I was in 5th grade, would do that, and why? It's just odd. No, to me it was the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to put my hand on her hand again. Like I used to sit by her sofa and with her on the sofa, and little dog Rosie, and put her hand on my hand on her hand, and we'd talk for several hours. She had a few little toys, and she'd tell me about her little boy Willie, who died, and her husband died in the influenza in the early 1900s. He was just a little boy, and maybe he was 8 or something when he died, or 7. So and she loved me coming over. I always loved old people. For some reason, I loved old people. I loved their stories, their histories, their lives, and their dying. I wrote a poem to Gertie, that my mother kept. I have it somewhere. The night that she had died, And I looked over and her light wasn't on in the window. And so I was in my bed and I wrote this poem about her and about how she was in heaven and or climbed the stairs or something. It was very metaphoric, which, that just, uh, it's a fascination. And God gave me the experience. And it's just not a negative thing. I'm spending my time with Sister Margaret Joseph, who God popped into my head the name Pearl. I sort of asked, what's her heavenly name? How can I talk to her? This was the first day I found out she had passed. I haven't met her, but I've been told about her and I have seen a picture of her, that she's a religious sister. And she had pancreatic cancer and I'd been praying for her with her suffering. I personally just prayed that she would suffer well and be able to die and enjoy, to really enjoy dying and be, going out, leaving her body, and how easy I would talk to her in with my mind that it's going to be so easy, you'll be so surprised, you're going to love it, and sort of prepare her because I figured my thought waves could go to her in Boston in the hospital there. So, well, it's just an instant away. It's as close as here. The other realm is not miles away. It's a different experience, different perspective and vision. So I wanted to know, well, how could I address her now? And in popped Pearl, Heavenly Pearl. And I sort of changed that to Pearl of Heaven. But I looked up Pearl. I thought, well, why Pearl? Lo and behold, Pearl is a name for Margaret. Isn't that something? And Joseph means increase or adding. He shall add. And so I thought, well, she's a pearl of heaven. She's adding. Her presence is adding a lot of good to heaven. Spiritual good. But then started coming these requests. Oh, well, she asked us to pray for her soul. She was concerned. Wanted prayers so she could get out of purgatory. It makes it seem like out of jail or something. Because there's been these images of the flames and the fires of purgatory and having all of our sins burned out but I don't see it that way. I see it that we are learning more love. It's what's being put in us. And it's wonderful to have more love so that we can be pure love. Because if you have 2 glasses of clear water, say one glass it's God and it's totally pure. Pure water. And you have another glass and there's just a little taint of maybe a drop of food color or something. And if you pour that into the clear, that won't do. It's maybe not a good example. We need something where you add to it something wonderful, the same element, so that it can be united with the pure element, God. God can't take in something that is not of at least enough value of purity of love. If there's a little bit of hate or a stumbling block, say in Sister Margaret, in Heavenly Pearl's soul, if there's something she doesn't totally embrace or wasn't able to in life or didn't understand, then that's given to her. So then she can become united with God's pure love. And God is timeless, so I can't imagine it would take long. honestly, what I thought of that would be the worst thing that she's probably ever done in her beautiful sacrificial life as a religious sister is maybe be too temporal, to be more tied to the temporal, or she wouldn't have asked for prayers to help her get out of purgatory, because she has that mindset that is it's a cultural thing. It's inculcated in Catholic children on up. Because I remember my little neighbor girl telling me if I colored Mary's outfit in my Christmas coloring book red, I would go to purgatory, which I knew nothing of, but it sounded bad. She says, it's bad. She says, you're going to go to purgatory for coloring her outfit red. It's supposed to be blue. But I had chosen red because that was my most favorite precious color. And I wanted the best for Jesus's mom, which was to me red. See, so even as a little child, my neighbor girl had this thing. Oh no. And she was concerned for me. Oh no. Oh dear. You're going to go to purgatory. You'll burn in the fires of purgatory. Of course, I was worried and immediately went to my grandmother, who was there, watching. My mom was teaching and hadn't gotten home yet because I was in kindergarten in the afternoon. And my grandma, oh, don't ever even think about it. You're not going anywhere. You're right here. You're fine. Ignore that. That's a terrible word, and it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything, And I trusted my grandmother, so I didn't fret about it. But ironically, in that very parish where old Peggy grew up, they have a stained glass window with Mary with a red cloak on. So when I was an adult, I laughed about that, and realized that. But Peggy had been told that, probably some sister had emphasized that Mary always wears blue or something. I don't know, but bless our hearts. We're human beings. But this is part of the teachings or the encouragement but I have the history of it. So I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to go right into a video going through the history of when purgatory started and why, and also the history of why we pray for the souls of those who died. That goes way back into Judaism and is passed on through. But to me, see why I just want familiarity with Heavenly Pearl, as I call her, because I think it's lovely. And I like the idea that I didn't know that Margaret means pearl, and pearl is a name for Margaret. And I thought, what an unusual God wink. So that's why I felt like God was saying, yes, dear, you can call her Pearl. I'm calling her Pearl. Maybe he's saying that, but it was like a go ahead. The green light, go ahead and call her Pearl. No harm done if she has some other heavenly name, which she will have some heavenly name that God calls her by. And there's in scripture somewhere, I think it's in Revelation or somewhere about, being called by a name in heaven or something. I'd looked it up way back when I got my heavenly name. So I'd asked for it and God told me what it was. And I have loved it ever since I got smart and got chastised about it. But because I didn't understand, I had to look up the meaning of the word to realize what a beautiful heavenly name God gave me. So God forgives us. He's not punitive. And, as long as we are humbly striving, and even when we're not, he's not vicious or mean to us. We just don't get where we would like to be as fast as when we're docile and cooperative. And I have no reason to believe that Heavenly Pearl isn't far better off than me. I question things and all. She's been trained to be very faithful And so I'm just trying to get a feel for her and love her so I can make connection. But see, I pray for my parents, but it's like a loving conversation. It's concern, it's love. I'm not concerned about their well-being. They're great. I'm the one that's on the weekend here. I'm the one that's bumbling around in the temporal world and, forget to be open to the spiritual and to um, have love in my soul and love of others. So yeah, so it's we'll see, we'll just see, um but if she asked for prayers, of course I'm going to pray for anyone. But I like to get to know and love the person. It makes it very sweet and special when we love and get to know the person we're talking with between worlds, and so to speak. So I'm very happy for Heavenly Pearl, and uh, for the thief. He Jesus said he would be in paradise with him that very day. And I trust that. I trust Jesus with that. But I don't know if it means this actual temporal 24-hour day period, or if it means that the thief had his soul transformed into pure love, so that he, upon death, was instantaneously there with pure love, had become pure love as God's pure love. It's possible, for sure, for certain. Does that mean that I will have instantaneous pure love? Or will I still be having a flashback of somebody who really, really hurt me, and I have to focus on loving his soul? I have to consciously focus on that. I did again today. I had to remind myself that I can love him, but it's his soul I can love. I don't love the ugly things he did. And I have no reason to believe that someone who is a sociopath with psychopathic lying and stuff, they tend not to be able to change without a lot of therapy and stuff. So, I don't know. So we'll see. But Sophia thinks that it's, at least, I don't know. I hope she writes back if she thinks there is a space or a potential for progression. But I'm with it on the purgatory. But people can use the term they want. We aren't told that we have to call it purgatory, or that there really is. Well, I guess we're supposed to believe as Catholics that there is a sphere or a process after we die to grow and to be purified, to have our love, to have our souls filled with love, pure love, so we can be united with God. I do get that an impurity cannot be melded with a purity. But it doesn't bother me to have that process. See, I love learning. I'm eager. I'm happy now that I had the awful flashback this morning, because I learned from it. I think it's great to learn, and I can honestly love my ex-husband's soul and my son's soul. I'm very concerned for my son's soul. And if I really loved my ex-husband a lot, I should be very, very concerned for his too. So there's the flip side of it. We can sort of do a little test of ourselves on our pure love level. A little pure love thermometer. Has it reached the top, the pinnacle, when we think of the person and his soul or her soul, or when we think of the opposite? That can be true then too, that if we don't love in other aspects. So, stuff to learn about love and to practice it. It's all part of it. It's great. Don't you think it's great? I hope so. Okay, yeah. I'm going to, I've got to take a little break and shoot some more nails into some trim. But I do want to go over the history because I think that gives us a context. And then we're not against anything, or, it's all good. It's all well intentioned. And the church, the temporal church, and the spiritual church, God gives us options, choices. So nothing says that you have to pray for someone who has died, for their soul. It's encouraged. They use the word, the Catechism uses the word encourage. The only thing that we are supposed to agree with or to understand is that there is a process for more purification of love. And I don't have a problem with it. But I'm starting to see all kinds of other options involved with it, such as the fact of timelessness, that someone might be instantaneously purified upon death who wasn't at all before. Because if Jesus is the judge after all. So if Jesus judges that a person, by what he said to him on the cross, has a pure heart and a pure soul, is filled with love, then that's good enough for Jesus. It's good enough for me. It's not my business other than to, for me, keep striving in loving souls. So, all right, later. And please leave comments. It's a fascinating topic, I think, because of the challenges of people's perceptions. And ultimately, there's no one coming along putting us in prison for thinking these or for understanding it this way.